But I mean, even then, like I still have a hard time saying that he's the best football player ever. I mean, just looking at his numbers, and I'm probably going to get hate for this. I don't care. It's my opinion.
I mean, the numbers are good too, historically. I mean, for how long he's been in the league.
But I mean, if we're looking at it from that perspective, right? You got Drew Brees, who is just about as athletic as he is, and Drew Brees has better passing numbers than Brady ever has more yards, higher completion percentage. He would probably have more touchdowns if he was in the league as long as him. So, and not to mention Drew was on a crappy team for about half that time. I don't know. I just don't. Now that he has more rings than anybody else, like you said, the conversation is over. Even if I don't think, even if I don't agree, I mean, there's nothing I can say now that'll change people's minds.
Yeah.
Because I mean, ultimately, this Super Bowl, I don't feel like it was won by him. I'll just say that.
I mean, no, and I think I agree with you because we'll get to the defense, and I think as we talked about with Peyton, same thing. With Peyton, obviously a bit different because Brady had a better, overall, like he was just a better quarterback than Peyton was at that time. But yeah, the defense, I think, really won this game ultimately, but we'll get to that in a few. It's surprising on Football Reference they don't put the 100 all-time team in there. But yeah.
So, I don't know.
I love how there's rumors on here too. What the heck?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the conversation's over, but I just don't like that people base it entirely off of how many wins he has when there's so much more to it than that, especially in a team sport.
Well, I mean, do you also understand that you kind of have to have, no, obviously with Michael it's different, but let's just go from the baseline of the Michael Jordan argument. The baseline of the Michael Jordan argument is 6 for 6. So the baseline of the Brady argument is 7 of 10.
Yeah, and
so you don't agree with the baseline of the argument.
No. I think it's ridiculous because it's a team sport. You're one guy on a team, right? I mean, yes, of course they were obviously very important and very vital in getting that win or wins multiple, but they weren't everything. Look at the Bulls. You had Scottie Pippen, who was a great supporter. I mean, even just look at yesterday, right? I mean, Brady himself didn't really even have that amazing of a game. I mean, he was fine, but it wasn't like, the best we'd ever seen or anything. He had a great running game, Fournette, and that defense completely shut down the Chiefs. That was what won the game to me. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it doesn't matter what sport it is. I think, if it's an individual sport, okay, like swimming,
like tennis with Serena Williams is a great example.
You want to look at the individuals' wins because it was them themselves. That's a fair argument, I think.
But they also have coaches and stuff too. They still have a supporting team, but they're the one on the field or.
No, I know, but they're the one person playing. So I don't know. I mean, I just don't. And again, that's the argument that he has the most rings, so therefore he's the best, and I'm never going to be able to.
No, I think that I just don't
agree with it. I just think it's a dumb premise for a team sport.
Brandon, do you kind of have the same thing? Because I understand where Shane's coming from in terms of the baseline argument. So the baseline argument for Michael Jordan is 6 for 6. The baseline argument for Brady is 7 of 10, basically. Do you agree with Shane's kind of doesn't really enjoy that sort of baseline argument for those two players.
I mean, I agree with some of what Shane's saying. Like, yeah,
I'm in the middle and not me.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle. Like, I like, it's a team sport. I think there can be like a GOAT. I think there's always going to be like that player that dominated. Like, hockey's a team sport, but everybody knows Wayne Gretzky was the greatest player to ever play hockey.
How many rings did he win again? What was his?
I don't know.
Ring set.
Like,
I feel like
but like, it's interesting because in that case, it's not really about rings for me. It's about just he has every single scoring title and assists and like he is the just stats wise, which to me is like way more important than like cups in terms of like something like hockey or basketball. Like stats wise, just like showcases it. Whereas like, for some reason, like, I don't think I'm pretty certain Brady is not the leader in stats for like NFL players.
I don't think he leads in. I believe a good portion of
categories. He leads in touchdowns. That's it.
But it's really interesting because right, yeah, because and it's really interesting where you look at that and it's like every other player who's considered a GOAT in their sport leads everything basically in stats.
Right. So see,
Tom Brady is not amazing in stats. Like it's just that he's managed to win all these rings, and that's the thing that's kind of gotten me over the years. It made me be like, how is he really the GOAT if he doesn't lead in all the stats?
So here's my thing too, Shane. Really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
LeBron James, when his career is done, is going to be Jordan in every category. So then where's the argument for LeBron then? See, that's where the disconnect is for me with this argument. That I know it's easy to say the rings, and I know it's harder to say the stats. But if you just say the stats, then you're going to have to say LeBron James when his career is over. You're going to have to.
I mean, no, I don't have to because LeBron James – because here's the thing. You could have stats, right? Like, what the rough thing is, like, you could be great in stats and be amazing, right? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it's the reason why I believe that Brady and Jordan, if I had to sit down and say who's the closest to each other and how I look at it, is Brady and Jordan are the closest to each other in that sort of idea because when it came down to it, at the end of the day, when they got to the finals, they get it done.
You know? But even Brady lost 3.
Right, and so when you're thinking about players who, when it comes time to get it done, and they don't stutter, they don't think about it, they don't falter. Jordan is the guy who got it done every time he made it to the finals. Now he definitely, as we've talked about, he has lots of experience in the playoffs, not winning, but when he made it to the finals, he always won. So it is, and it's a good conversation you're bringing up, Robert, because I kind of don't love the idea. I don't love the GOAT conversation to begin with, because
this is why we don't love it. This is why we don't love the conversation.
I've said many times that each generation brings someone new who enters the conversation. Who, as their career goes on, you have someone go, oh, they're the GOAT. And I think I've said it, or they're possibly going to be a new GOAT. And I think I've brought up with basketball, like, you had guys like Kareem and Wilt and like, of course, MJ, LeBron. I mean, hell, Kobe. Hell, you already have guys coming up now in this recent generation that people could possibly say in the future are going to be the GOAT, like Giannis or like
or Mahomes down the road, maybe.
Right. Mahomes, Curry, like
Luka. I don't know.
Rodgers, possibly, maybe. Yeah. But like, I think everybody. I think the thing that I want to just leave this conversation on is, it's easy to get caught up in the like heat of arguing for who you think is the best.
That's the fun of it too. Like this argument is fun at the end of the day.
But at the end of the day, all these players who we argue about, who are so good, That's what they are. They are all amazing players who we get the opportunity to watch them showcase their abilities day in and day out. And, like, we're just basically here talking about them. And they're actually out there putting on amazing feats of athleticism, some more than others.
Well, there's two separate things that I want to point out. One is the difference between the GOAT conversation versus the athlete conversation. They are two separate conversations. They just are. Because in athlete conversation is the pure athlete, the individual. Goes back to Shane's thing. The individual argument is more reserved for the athlete in some ways. The idea of who's the greatest athlete of all time. And that's why I don't think Brady's high on that list. I think he's on that list at some level, but he's not fully on that list. Versus what is the actual GOAT conversation where we come to guys like Gretzky, like Jordan, and Serena, I think, fits in both those conversations. That's why she's so unique. I'm sure some others for tennis as well, but more specifically as well, Brady in football as well, I should say. But there's that conversation, and then there's the conversation of how do we pick and choose it? Because, okay, I could say, like for me, I could say Brady's the GOAT because of 6 or because of the 7 of 10, but then I can say LeBron because of the statistics. But it's not a fair argument because I'm going 100% in both ways. So you can't really have it both ways, right? So that's part. I think ultimately that's part of why the conversation, us even having this conversation as much as we're having it, but also it's part of why the conversation's a little bit bogus and why it is annoying that. And it's good that we've had this conversation now and not like all the time, like most shows do, because most shows honestly do have this conversation way too often. But that's why the conversation is somewhat overblown, because there's no way to convince the other person. Plus, it depends where you stand on each different sport has, in some ways, different criteria from different people. It's an impossible conversation.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a great conversation. It's a fun conversation. But it's not the best.
I get tired of having the conversation though, because it just ends up going in circles.
Right, so. Exactly. And I think that's what we're sort of pointing out here ultimately.
Yeah.